Want to give a quick shout out to all of my patrons. Thank you so much for continuing to support my channel. Hey everybody, it's Matt from Matt's Fantasy Book Reviews, and it is the last day of the month, which means it is time for the December reading recap. And as always, we're going to start this off with a little bit of a channel update. So the channel continues to grow pretty steadily. We are now at about 5,800 subs, which is awesome. I continue to say this. I will probably continue to say it in the future, but I kind of felt like I would maybe have like a tenth of what I have right now. So I am very grateful to everybody for continuing to support the channel. The Discord continues to grow. It's a really fun environment. There's been about 40 new people added in the past month. We're up to about 260. So if you have not joined yet, hit the link down below. It's a good time. A lot of people always talking. I'm there all the time, so I'd love to chat with you about the books that we are reading. The Patreon account continues to grow. I think last month it was at like 3. I think now we're up to like 9 or 10, so that's awesome. Really appreciate it. I'm surprised that anybody would be willing to do that, and I'm just very grateful to everybody that wants to continue to support. I started a new series that I am not done with of my end of the year videos. And I'll talk about those in a little bit. I've done 3 of them so far to kind of recap the year in my own kind of way. And I have a few more left to come. And so expect a few of those. I have to wait on a couple until the end of the year to really go down all the books that I'm going to be reading next year and what I've finished out this year and ranking them and all of that fun stuff. On the personal side, this month I got a new job. Very excited about that. I'm still working in politics as a chief of staff, but I have switched over from doing it on the local side to at the state level. So I'm very excited about that. I used to work on the state level as a legislative director about 7 years ago, or 6 years ago, something like that. So I'm excited to go back in this new kind of expanded role. So I'm very excited about that. And of course, this was Christmas. I have 2 little kids. They're at like the best age for Christmas, like around 5, both of them. And it's so fun. Christmas is so much more fun when you have little kids to share it with. And if you have kids and you've been through this, you know what I'm talking about, but it is just a blast. Also, my entire family got really sick this month. Not like horrible, but we all got the flu. Hit us pretty hard. It's the reason I read a little bit less than I kind of felt like I should have, and why I kind of missed all of my targets, because there was a couple days here where I read nothing. I tried to open a book and read like a page, and I just couldn't do it. One day I was literally in the bed from like the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed. I slept like a cat, like 16 hours or something, which is insane for me. I normally sleep like 6 or 7, so that was my month. So now let's jump into the specifics and the numbers for this month. So I read 7 whole books, which is not a ton, definitely lower than my norm, but the pages was the same as last month. Read about 4,200 pages, so that's a good amount. I'm not good at math, but that's a lot of pages. I am finishing out this year by reading 117 total books. My goal was hit. I wanted to read 100. I well exceeded that, and I'm very happy about that. I think 100 is a good goal for me to put. My pages this year was a little over 60,000. My goal was 50,000, and yeah, far exceeded that. Some of the books I read were very big. I read like a 2,000 page book. Just got done reading one which is like 1,500 pages. Read a couple of other 1,500-ish page ones. So very large books this year, which is why I read less books than last year, but more pages. I think last year I read 124. So yeah, 117 is less, but more pages, a lot more pages actually. And my average score for this year was 3.81, which is a dip. I don't know why, but I've actually dipped in my scores the past couple years, and I'm hoping I can reverse that going forward, but that's still pretty good. I mean, a 3 is good to me, a 4 is very good, a 5 is amazing. For a 3.81 to be my average, yeah, I can live with that. My views this month were about 40,000. This is down from 80,000. Everything on my view counts and stuff was about cut in half. My hours watched this month was 6,000, down from 12. And my subscriptions to the channel this month was 425, down from 1,000. And I think the big reason for that is, you know, I was doing for a while these videos, these like top 10 videos, and I'm still doing top 10 videos, but like ones that I knew would be big. You know, like top 10 best fantasy books. That, you know, that's going to be a huge video. You know, top 10 most underrated fantasy books of all time. You know, these are books, these are titles, and if you're a booktuber and you want to figure out how to grow your channel, these like top 10s that are like, you know, the definitive top 10 and they're not specific at all are gonna blow up your channel. And they did for mine for a while. So I want to do, you know, updates to those because I've read so many books going into next year, but, you know, I don't want to push it. You know, I don't want to, you know, keep doing videos just to do them. I want to do videos that I feel like are important to me, and I just want to keep doing what I believe in and what I want. And I haven't wanted to kind of go down that path of keep doing these huge videos that and I've kind of gone a little more niche, but that's the reason. And so this month, my top 3 most viewed videos all had about 4,000, and they were my 3 videos that I've done to kind of recap the month. It was the top 10 most underrated fantasy books I read in 2022, top 10 most disappointing fantasy books I read in 2022, and the 100+ fantasy books that I will read in 2023. And yeah, like if I didn't say 2022 at the end of those videos and I just said the top 10 underrated, I would have had twice the amount of views, 3 times, 4 times. But so yeah, there's a tip for you if you are doing a YouTube channel and you want to do that kind of video. So now let's go over the 7 books that I read. The first was Unseen Academicals. This is in the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett. And I predicted that I would give it a 4. I gave it a 3. And I predicted I'd finish it on December 2nd, and I finished it on December 5th. This is when I got sick. So I started off on a bad note, and it never really got much better until the very end. But yeah, this book, I didn't end up doing a review on it because I was sick. I finished it while I was sick. I couldn't do my traditional thing of reading the book as I finish it. And I didn't have a lot to say about this one. I just felt like it was okay. You know, it's a parody on soccer. And I thought I'd like this more because I'm a big soccer fan. I'm a big sports fan, huge sports fan. It's the only thing I really watch on TV. I'm like obsessive about football and soccer and baseball. And specifically the soccer I like is English soccer. And this is what this clearly is because Terry Pratchett is from England. And it just never really hit for me. I felt like there was 2 main storylines going on. One of them was the Wizards trying to start a soccer team, and it didn't grip me like I felt like it should, which is surprising, not only because of the soccer aspect, but because Rincewind, which is, when the Wizards are involved, Rincewind is the central figure usually. And he barely showed up in this. And I don't like Rincewind very much. I think he's very boring. But the Wizards just were not their traditional funny, witty, are those the same word? Did I just say the same word? They're the normal selves that I'm used to, and I just didn't get a ton of enjoyment out of it. It was more kind of interesting than funny, and I need to laugh when I'm reading a Pratchett book. And the other was this like parody on fashion, and it did not work for me at all. That side plot, it wasn't the main part of the book, but yeah, none of the book just really worked perfectly. So 3 felt like a decent score for me, if not a little friendly of a score, and yeah. So then I read Enemy of God. This is the 2nd book in the Warlord Chronicles. This is by Bernard Cornwell. I predicted I'd give it a 4 out of 5 because that's what I gave the first book in the series. And I gave it a 5 out of 5, a very high 5 out of 5. I loved Enemy of God. And I predicted I'd finish it on December 6th, and I finished it on December 10th. And oh my gosh, this book is... I tried to say anything that's remotely profanity on this channel, because I know some younger people are watching, but I will say oh my god, because it's called Enemy of God, so I feel like I'm not saying anything wrong here. It's so good. It's so good. I already knew that I liked Bernard Cornwell. I've read a couple of his books before this. He does historical fiction. I've been going through and reading some historical fiction books. I'm going to continue doing that through January, and then I'll take a break from that for quite a while because I have so many fantasy books that I want to read. And I'm getting through the main historical fictions that I wanted to hit. And this is one of them. And oh man, it's this retelling of the legend of King Arthur. And in this one, I won't ruin anything, but it's the best of the three by far. And I think almost everybody says that. It works so well. It's dramatic, major events happen. There's these huge set piece battles. Tragedy happens to some of these characters. You get to see, characters turn on each other. Just this huge political intrigue. It is so good. And it's almost like a fantasy book because Merlin's in this and Merlin can cast magic. But it's very subtle and you're never quite sure if does he really have magic or does he just do people think he does? And it's such a great aspect because Bernard Cornwell is just a genius because he writes these books and in this one, we all know kind of the basics of the legend of King Arthur. If not specifically, in general, what's going on here. But clearly, it didn't happen like that. In real life, this might not even happen. King Arthur might not even have been a real person. None of these people might not have been real. Definitely Merlin wasn't. But, it's debatable whether King Arthur was even real. And he clearly didn't pull a sword out of a stone. He clearly didn't do many of these things. But the book accomplishes that so well because it's told in this framing narrative where you have this character, Durfel, who's telling the story to a woman. He's writing this chronicle and kind of telling it at the same time about his life and how King Arthur was a major part of his life and how they kind of grew up together and did this, not grew up, but how they, led. He was one of these major leaders in his his Knights of the Round Table. But all of these legends end up being kind of false or different. And it's clearly he's telling the story, and then that when the Christians are going to read this book, because King Arthur was not a Christian, they're going to alter it, and they're going to make it look more beneficial. And so you're almost seeing how the legend became as you're reading this book. It is amazing. Not just the way it's written like that, which I think is amazing, but just everything about it, the plot structure. It rocks. So then I read the first in the Licanius trilogy. This is The Shadow of What Was Lost. This was a viewer pick on the Patreon channel. And Patreon, for me, there's 2 books that I read a month that are viewer picks. One of them is everybody puts a book in a raffle and I spin it and I see what wins. One of them is I put 5 books that I'm kind of interested in and you vote on them. This is the voted one. And this is by James Islington. And oh man, I did not like this book very much. It was okay. It had a lot of promise. I thought I'd give it a 5 out of 5. I gave it a 3 out of 5. And you can watch my review. I'll link it up above here. But it just had so much promise. I liked so many things about it. And I hated so many things about it. It had this kind of fun, I keep saying it, this Wheel of Time aspect to it, of this journey, a point A to point B journey, specifically the first book in the Wheel of Time. And it meanders, and it has some weird magic elements with time travel that I do not love, normally don't love. Some time travel can work for me, didn't work here. The characters, I didn't love them. I didn't love the writing style. Everything was just okay. And that's why I gave it a 3. But I know a lot of people love this series, and I kind of get why a lot of people do. Just didn't quite work for me. Then I read the Lonesome Dove series. I read Streets of Laredo. Last month I read Lonesome Dove itself, which I claimed is my second favorite book of all time. This is a sequel, and this is by Larry McMurtry. I thought I'd give it a 4 out of 5, and I did give it a 4 out of 5. And I predicted I'd finish it on December 13th, and I finished it on December 18th. This didn't have the charm of the first book, and in part because very few of the characters are the same. it takes this kind of, quite a bit of time gap between the previous book and this one. And this is a very dark world. It's real. I mean, it's America in the late 1800s. And that's not a great time to live, especially where they're living, kind of in the central United States. Not a lot of development here. There's a lot of death, a lot of, diseases, a lot of animal attacks, a lot of Indian attacks. And it's just, so a lot of the characters are different. I'll leave it at that. And it's just kind of a bandit story of like a guy trying to take down a bandit. And a lot of it is from the bandit's perspective and why he is who he is, but the charm is gone. You didn't get that slice of life that you got from the first Lonesome Dove book, and which made it so good for me. The first Lonesome Dove book, not a lot happens. It's about a cattle drive. That's it. Now, some fun things happen in there, but it's about the characters. And the characters just weren't as good in this one. But I still enjoyed my time, but yeah, it is not nearly as good as that first book. I will continue the series, but yeah, I'm not expecting it to reach the heights of that first book. And I don't think anybody will claim that the follow-up and then the two next books that I'm going to read are prequels. But who knows? Maybe I'll like them as much. I doubt it, though. The next book I got was the raffle choice in Patreon, and this was 11/22/63 by Stephen King. This is my first Stephen King book, and I predicted I would give it a 4, and I gave it a 3. Also predicted that I'd finish it on December 15th, finished it on the 18th. And another one where, I felt like it had so much promise. The middle, large amount of the middle just dragged. The ending I thought was okay. The beginning was great. And this story here is a kind of a time travel story. Not kind of, it is. And you find out very early on in the book that there's this man who finds out that he can travel back in time from modern day, I think it's around like 2000 or so, to back in the late 50s and in the same location. And the gimmick here that's so interesting is that he can spend time there, and no matter how long he stays in this past, when he comes back, it's only 2 minutes that have passed. But he will continue to age, so like if he was 40 and he spent 20 years there and came back, he would look like he's 60, even though he comes back and everyone's like, what happened to you? But he decides that he wants to alter history. And specifically, he wants to stop the JFK assassination. And it's a very interesting premise and a fun one. There's this weird romantic subplot that happens in this book that I was not a big fan of. And I like some romance stories, don't get me wrong. I don't love them, but it just didn't work here. It felt like this weird teenage, sex-craved side plot. It turned into like too much of a slice of life story. Now, I realize I look hypocritical here because when I talked about Lonesome Dove just now, I said I wanted more slice of life, but I'm just a complicated guy, I guess. I wanted more to the direct plot here. I wanted more manipulation of the world to see the impacts of it. And I just didn't get what I wanted here. Although I will say, I was intrigued by Stephen King. I will read more. I'm going to be reading The Stand, hopefully in January. Although I'm going to be doing audiobook, and because of the new job, I'm working a lot closer to home. So I'm not going to be driving as much. So I'm not going to be listening to as many audiobooks. So it's going to take me probably a whole month to get through that audiobook. So maybe February I'll end up finishing that and reviewing The Stand, which I'm really looking forward to. Then I read the Warlord Chronicles Excalibur, and this was by Bernard Cornwell, of course, and I predicted a 4 out of 5, and I gave it a 4 out of 5. I have not released my review of this, though. I finished it today, just before recording this, and I predicted I'd finish it on December 21st, and man, I missed it by a lot. Finished it on December 30th. I record these the day before I release them, and I released them a little early on Patreon, and I don't really want to say a lot because I want you to watch my review, but I will just say that, the second book clearly was the best. This one wrapped it up nicely. I thought it was a very good ending, but it's hard to compare these books sometimes. Like if this was a standalone, I might say 5 out of 5. I probably wouldn't, but, I think everyone has biases, and one of mine is it's hard for me not to compare books to other books in that series. And man, this is a big drop off from Enemy of God. Of course it is. Enemy of God is an amazing book. So, yeah, get ready for that review. Then I read, and I finished today also, Mother of Learning, Arc 3. This is finally wrapped up Mother of Learning. This was an enormous book, like 1,500 or so pages. This is by Domagoj, Kurmaic, and I predicted a 5 out of 5, and oh baby, was this a 5 out of 5. It's so good. The ending just rocks. The plot is incredible. The magic gets turned up to 11. I want everyone to go pick up Mother of Learning, knowing what you're getting here is not the greatest writing in the world. What you are getting is an incredible plot with incredible magic systems. It's just fun, just unadulterated fun. And I read this, I sped through this one. And I made up all my time here because I predicted I'd finish it on the 29th and I finished it on the 30th. So almost got back to what I predicted, but not quite there. So ultimately this month I predicted that I would overall give a 4.3, ended up giving a 3.9, in large part because of The Shadow of What Was Lost. Predicted a 5, gave it a 3. If that was more like a 4 out of 5, 4 or 5, I think my score would have been what I predicted. So as always, I miss on the predictions, on the predicted scores, because I always am optimistic. Too optimistic. Maybe I should start being a little more pessimistic to surprise me in a positive way. But it is what it is. So that is my recap for the month. Tomorrow I will be coming out with a video of my TBR for January, and I look forward to bringing that to you then. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, happy reading to you. Thanks again to my patrons, and a special shout out to my Ascendant tier patrons, Sky, Russell, and Ron Reich.